In this video, we will be demonstrating the proper technique in disassembly and cleaning of an AR-15 rifle. We will not be showing any types of modification of the firearm. This video is in accordance with YouTube's published guidelines. Hey guys, in this video I thought I would take a few minutes to outline how it is that I will clean an AR-15. There's several different ways that people will generally choose to clean their ARs, and I just thought I would show you mine. This is my M&P Sport 2. This is possibly one of the most popular ARs on the market currently. The Sport 2, of course, features the forward assist as well as the dust cover, which were something that were left off of the original Sport. Now, the only thing really that I have done to it is add the Vortex 2, Strike-Fire 2, and then the AB Arms handguard here, and I will put links to both of these down in the description. With an AR, just as with any firearm, the first thing you want to do before cleaning is to make sure that it is unloaded, and you can see there's nothing in the magazine, and also there is nothing in the chamber. So for those of you all who may not be familiar with the AR, there are two pins. You can see one side here on the front, the other pin is right here located on the back, and what you will do is you will generally push those through from the left hand side of the firearm. Now, different models are going to be just a little bit different as far as how stiff they are when you push those through. On the M&P Sport 2, it's fairly easy. Some of them you actually may have to use a punch. And you want to be careful to not drop the two halves, because you're going to be separating the two halves of the firearm. So once you push that pin through, I'm just going to lay it down. I'm going to pull that pin on up, just like that. And I can separate the lower from the upper. Once I have those two separated, I can then simply pull out the bolt carrier group, just like that, as well as the charging handle, and I am ready to begin the cleaning process. One thing that you do not want to do once you have your AR apart is you do not want to pull the trigger, allowing the hammer to strike this metal. Over a period of time, that can damage your firearm if you let it do that enough. Anytime that you're working on that or cleaning it, you will want to put your finger, your thumb, in front of that and pull that trigger, and then ease that hammer forward if you're needing to get down in there to clean real well, as you can see that I just did here. I will generally take a patch, just a standard patch, nothing too fancy, and put that in my cleaning rod. Now, the cleaning kit that I'm using is not very expensive. You can find it anywhere. I will drop a link in the description also for a simple cleaning kit. The main thing is you want something that has a soft metal rod. This one is brass and it works real well. That way you don't have to worry about scratching up or damaging your firearms. I'll generally begin by simply taking a patch, rolling it up and putting it in the holder for my cleaning rod, just like this. I will then take just a little bit of Hops number 9, nothing very fancy. This is just something that I have always used. I've always liked the Hops. Now, this particular holder can be a little bit difficult to get down the barrel of some of the smaller caliber rifles. However, I will just take the rod, run it through the barrel just like that till I get it up here all the way through, and then I can simply thread that on there just like that, no problem whatsoever, and then pull that cleaning patch through. If you try to force this through with this type of a holder, it just does not want to go, and there's no need to fight it. Just do this little trick and it will work just fine. Once I get it started through there, I can work it back and forth a little bit. And what I'm doing is just coating the inside of the barrel with the Hops number 9, with that solvent, so it can start breaking down any of the deposits that are in there. And just kind of set that off to the side and let it soak for a bit, and then we will come back to that. The next thing that I will do is to take the lower, take some just plain old-fashioned Q-tips. Now you can get swabs to do this, but I find that just a regular Q-tip seems to work fine. And I will dip that Q-tip in the hops as well, and I will begin working some of that solvent down into the trigger group and just everywhere that there could be deposits build up in this firearm. You know, you can take the trigger group out. It's not real common to do that just in general cleaning. I like to occasionally do a white glove cleaning of all my firearms. You know, they're expensive, so you might as well take care of them. But just wiping that down just like that, getting everywhere that deposits can be, the buildup is, and you can see it's not very dirty down in there at the moment. There's not been a lot of rounds through this firearm since the last time that I cleaned it. And you can also take the Q-tip and on the inside of the chamber, you can get down in there as well and just kind of clean all the areas, all the surfaces down in there. You can see we're getting some buildup there. And that's the thing about an AR-15 with the impingement system. Any of that blowback, it just spits it right into this area. And just get in there and get it cleaned out real good. You might want to clean around the locking lugs. Now make sure that the Q-tip, if you use them, does not come apart and has little pieces of it stuck in there. That can cause you a problem. And you'll probably go through several Q-tips doing this. You can see how filthy that one is. So we're just going to get another one and we're just going to keep going. Once you get some of that solvent worked down in there, again, you can let it set for a while. You can come back with a clean Q-tip and begin wiping out the trigger group down in that area just to make sure you get all that solvent out, and then also put a little bit of oil down in there. And again, make sure that none of the Q-tip tips come off and get stuck into the trigger group or any other parts of the AR. Now while that is setting there, letting the solvent do its thing, the next step we're going to do is to start taking apart the bolt carrier group. The first step in this process is to remove this cotter pin right here. You can get a simple tool, a pick, even a shell or anything, and get underneath that and simply pull that pin out. It should come out with very little problem. And just get it up like that. You want to make sure that you do not lose this. And if you lose that, it's going to cause you problems later. You must have that. Once you have that pin out, the firing pin will fall right out of the carrier group. Now that we have that out, the next step is to push the carrier group in. Take note of where the position is for the ejector, just the way that group goes together. That is very critical. We're just going to push this back just like that, and then we're going to rotate this cam. Once you rotate that, you can then work it out from underneath the gas block. Sometimes it takes a little bit of doing, but different ARs, it's a little different. I can't seem to get that with my hands, so let me get something to get it started. Just like that, it pulls right out. And then once that comes out, I can then pull this completely out. And once we have that out, again, take some solvent, soak everything down, give the solvent a bit of time to work. It will make cleaning of the AR much easier. You can see that's just absolutely filthy. So we're just going to get a good coating in there. You don't want to ruin your solvent. Just get everything really good and coated with the solvent. You can see just how dirty this is. And again, this is not from a lot of firing. I mean, I have not shot a lot of rounds through this gun since the last time I cleaned it, but this does build up fairly quickly, especially in the bolt carrier. So we're just going to set that off to the side and make sure that you do not lose any of the pieces for the bolt carrier group. We're just going to let that solvent do its work, and we're going to come back to the upper. Once you have gotten everything soaked with the solvent, take the brush, screw it into your cleaning rod, take your upper, feed the brush through, and give it a good scrubbing. Working it back and forth, breaking up as much of those deposits as possible. After a few passes with the brush, you may want to take a clean patch and run it through the bore to make sure that you wipe everything out. Again, I'm just going to get another patch out of my supply here, and patches are cheap, folks, and old t-shirts will work well for this too. If you got any old t-shirts, they can do a good job as patches. You know, if they're tore up anyways, just take them and cut them up, you know, save you a little bit of money on cleaning supplies and actually use them for cleaning your guns. Get the patch fed through, and I'm going to go ahead and give it just a little bit more solvent. Not much, not as much as I did the last time, but just a little bit. I'm going to then take the rod, take the brush off of it, set it aside, feeding my rod through the bore, because this one is just a little bit larger than I need for an AR. I broke one or two of these. You know, these things are cheap plastic in most cases, but again, I would rather have something cheap like that than something that's hard that could damage the inside of the bore. So I just run that in there, work that back and forth a few times to make sure that it's cleaned out. And you can see that we did pull a little bit more off of that. We're going to get another patch and run through there until we get a fairly clean patch through. And that way we know that the inside of that bore is clean. So I'm just going to take this off again. Yeah, I could save myself some time. I could go get the right one, but you know, I don't have one here with me at the moment. The gun store's closed, so I'll use what I've got. Simply thread that back on. And it doesn't take many times through before you get most of the buildup out, until we get it completely clean, till we get a fairly clean patch out of there. And I like to take care of my firearms. They're expensive. You know, there are some people out there that can buy many more firearms than I can, but if you're like me, you know, you want to take care of what you have. That way it'll last you for many years. So periodically give them a real good cleaning, take care of them, and you know, enjoy them. Enjoy those Second Amendment rights, being able to go out and purchase a firearm and use it the way you see, for hunting, for sport shooting, and you know, it's just part of our way of life, part of the things that we can do in this country. It's part of freedom, being free. Now, we're going to set this back to the side. We are going to go back to the bolt carrier group. You may want to take a brush that comes with your cleaning kit. One of the brushes usually for some of the larger calibers. Let me dig out one I need. You can generally get a brush like for a shotgun down through there fairly easy, just like that. Take that apart, and most of the kits that are out there will come with some type of an adapter that will allow you to use different size cleaning components, just like this. We wiped this down earlier with some of that solvent. Now I'm just going to take this brush, run in there. Of course, it won't go all the way through,
because of the size difference, but you can take a smaller one and then run it through also. I'm going to break all that stuff up and get all of that cleaned out. And now I'm just going to change this over to a smaller brush, just like this. And that way I can go through there where the firing pin is and get all of the solvent or all of the buildup broken loose. And then once I do that, this being as short as it is, I can just use a Q-tip. I can go back and use a patch, but you know, why not just use a Q-tip instead of having to worry about trying to run it in and out. And even if after running that brush in there, you can see that it's still absolutely filthy. So what I'm going to do is to keep going, keep working on this, and get all of the buildup out of this bolt carrier. And then we will come back and I'll show you how to reassemble. Alright guys, once we get everything scrubbed good and wiped down, it's time to start reassembling some of the key components. But before we do that, one thing that I want to tell you about is you always want to inspect the gas rings here, check it for cracks, make sure it's not broken. You also want to look at the ejector. You want to make sure that there is no pieces of brass or anything, any kind of debris or anything that gets stuck up underneath there that can cause you some problems. Now, if if you find any, you want to go ahead and take care of it now before you put everything back together, and then when you're out shooting, that's when you discover you still have a problem. And for lubrication, there are tons of different products on the market. Hops makes a good gun oil. There's many other manufacturers out there. I suggest doing a little bit of research, figuring out what works well, what you think works well. Everybody has their own opinions. You know, there are tons of video comparisons out there, and I would encourage you to go and look those up. But you want to make sure that you use a good lubricant. Now, what we're going to begin with is reassembling the bolt carrier group once we have everything cleaned and inspected. I like to take just a little bit of oil and put on the components. Does not take a lot, but just a little. Rub that around there, especially around that ring. Wipe that down, just kind of get it good and coated. A good gun oil is going to stick to the metal. It's not just going to wipe off real easily. It's actually going to stick to that metal. You want to make sure that you have the proper orientation on the ejector. You want to make sure that it goes in correctly in the correct direction. Now that we have that lubricated, we're just easily going to slide this back into position. And what we want to do is gently press it. Do not force any of this. Once you get it back there close to where it needs to be, you're going to feel the tension on that. You don't want to get too aggressive with it, but you want to gently push it back into place. What you will want to be sure to do is to line up the opening where you can get the pin back in place. Before you put it in, you also want to give it just a little bit of oil. Just takes a drop, then just cover it, just wipe it over everything, get it covered, and get that lined up again, making sure that the ejector is going to be in the right position. You push this into place. It should go fairly easily. Once you get it down into position, rotate that 90 degrees to where it will lock into place, to where that cam will lock into place. If you don't rotate it at 90 degrees, you're not going to get that firing pin back in. And I want to take a minute to tell you about something, a mistake that does happen to some people. If you're not paying attention, a lot of people can do this. But take the firing pin, drop that into place, just like that. You want to push that through, don't force it, but make sure that it is all the way down before you put this pin back in place. The reason is this retaining pin, if you do not get that firing pin in the correct position, once you put this in, what's actually going to happen is this pin is going to be in front of this ring that's on the firing pin. and what will happen is a major malfunction. If you cycle that action, this firing pin more than likely is just going to fall out and you're going to create a major malfunction. So you want to make sure that when you put the firing pin back into place that it gets all the way down into position. After you do that, you can then take and reinstall the retaining pin. Just like that, it pushes right in, no problem whatsoever. You want to make sure that it goes completely in and is seated flush. You want to make sure that, and just to test the firing pin, I'm going to just lightly tap it and you can see it's not falling out. I know that it's in the correct position. Just to inspect it a little more, I'm also going to check that cam, make sure that it's doing its job. The action is working fine. That cam, the pin goes through that, the firing pin goes through it, and our carrier group, our bolt carrier group, is reassembled. Once you get the bolt carrier reassembled, you can take just a little bit of oil, and you can see on most of your ARs, depending on how much you shoot them, you will see the wear marks from where it's metal to metal in many cases. You want to put just a little bit of lubrication on each of these landings. Doesn't have to be too heavy, but you want to make sure that it is well lubed for metal to metal contact. I'm just going to put a couple of drops there and then I'm just going to rub it in. Just that. It doesn't take much, but I just like to make sure that it is coated good. In fact, I just go over what's on my finger. No problem whatsoever. I'll go ahead and put a drop here, just like that. Drop here, and rub that in also. And one thing that I will do on mine, if I'm not going to shoot it for a while, I will actually wipe everything down with oil. I know it's the finishes, there's usually no issues with moisture, or anything like that where I store my firearms, and the finishes are pretty durable on many modern firearms. But it's just me. I like to make sure that they're well covered in oil if I'm not going to be shooting them for a while. It's just kind of a little bit of added protection. And I'm going to take just a little bit of oil on the charging handle also. Just wipe it off, a drop of oil. Just rub it in place. It'll get distributed out. Doesn't take much, just a little bit. Now I'm going to take the upper, lay the charging handle into its slot. Now you'll notice, for those of you who are not familiar with the AR-15s, you've got two notches here on the charging handle, if you can see in the video. There are two corresponding openings in the upper. You will put the charging handle just into position. You're not going to want to try to put it down here, because then it's not going to go. You're going to cause yourself problems. Put it in slightly high and then slide it up to those two notches. Let it drop in and push it in slightly, not very far. Take your bolt carrier group and you want to make sure that this is extended. If it's not extended, you need to pull that out. And lay the gas block right into the opening on that charging handle, and once you get that started into place, you can simply push everything back together until it clicks. Just like that. Now the upper is reassembled and ready to go back on the rifle. But before we do that, we're also going to put just a little bit of lubrication in the trigger group. We've got it cleaned up, so I'm going to take my oil, and it doesn't take much, again, just a drop or two, right down into that trigger group. All the pivot points, we're just going to put a drop on, and to work that in, I'm simply going to take my thumb, push the hammer back, keeping my thumb in position. I'm going to pull that trigger, allow the hammer to go forward, and I'm just going to kind of work that into position, just like that, to make sure that it is all well lubricated. And do not pull that trigger, allowing that hammer to go forward and strike the metal very hard. I mean, that can damage it over a period of time. Firearms are expensive, so take care of them. Once you've got everything lubricated up, now we're going to take the upper and the lower, and reassemble them. Make sure that you have the hammer down. Simply set the upper and lower together just like that. Push your pins in just like that, and cycle the charging handle a couple of times to make sure everything is working. You may even want to take your magazine, an empty mag, put it in there, make sure that the mag catch still works. You can see there that it still works fine, no problem whatsoever. And we have now got our AR-15 reassembled. I also recommend that you check your safety. Make sure that you put it on safe, pull the trigger, and you can see it does not do anything. Guys, that is how you can disassemble, clean, and reassemble an AR-15. Again, this is my M&P Sport 2. This is common for most AR-15 platforms. One thing that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned is that once you get finished cleaning any firearm, wash your hands using cold water. That may sound strange, but the reason that you want to use cold water is that it makes your pores contract. And when you're dealing with solvents, when you're dealing with the buildup that's on your rifle or handgun or whatever you're cleaning, using warm water, what will happen, your pores will open up and you can actually wash those chemicals, those solvents, and those contaminations directly into your body. So if you use cold water during cleanup, it lessens the chance of you getting that stuff into your bloodstream. Anyways, guys, if you liked the video, I would appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe, drop me any comments down below, love to hear from you. And let me know if you are interested in seeing anything in particular. I'd like to know what your thoughts are, the kind of videos that you would like to see on this channel. Anyways, guys, thanks again for watching. We will see you next time.